For 300 years, humanity had been the quiet neighbor of the galaxy. When humans first built ships that could travel faster than light in the year 2247, they found a universe already full of older and stronger civilizations. The Velthari Dominion controlled 17 star systems and had done so for thousands of years. The Kreth Collective was a race of tall reptilian warriors who believed strength was the only thing that mattered. The insectoid Mallory claimed to own the very center of the galaxy itself. These species had been fighting and trading and building empires long before humans learned to make fire. And what did humanity do when they met these powerful aliens? They asked for trade agreements. They offered friendship. They proposed cooperation. The other species found this. Amusing Admiral Catherine Cole sat in her office aboard a Dugna diplomatic station floating in space near the planet called Nexus Prime. She was reading the latest report about another attack on human ships. The Kreth had captured a human cargo vessel in a region of space that both species claimed. 12 crew members were now prisoners. This was the third time something like this had happened just this year. Her second in command, a younger officer named Daniel Pierce, stood on the other side of her desk. His hands were tight fists at his sides. "They're testing us again," he said. His voice was controlled, but Catherine could hear the anger underneath. "The Galactic Council has scheduled a mediation meeting for next month," Catherine replied. She kept her voice calm, even though she felt the same anger. "We will handle this through proper channels." "With respect, Admiral, we have been handling things through proper channels for decades. Do you remember what happened on the colony world of Meridian?" The Kreth attacked without warning. They killed 4,000 civilians. Men, women, children. And what did the Council do? They gave the Kreth a formal warning. That was all. A warning. Catherine closed her eyes for a moment. She remembered Meridian very well. Her younger brother had lived there. He had been a teacher at a small school near the main settlement. He had been helping evacuate students when a Kreth bomb landed on the building. They never found enough of him to bury, but humanity had accepted the Council's decision. They had swallowed their grief and their rage. They had moved forward. That was what civilized species did. The other aliens had developed certain ideas about humans over the centuries. Humans were accommodating. Humans preferred talking to fighting. When the Velthari demanded exclusive rights to mine valuable minerals in a star system that humans had already explored and mapped, the humans simply shrugged and went to find another star system. When the Mallory declared that human religious practices were offensive and banned them on shared space stations, humans simply practiced their faith quietly in private. Soft species, the other races whispered to each other when humans were not around. No stomach for real conflict. No warrior spirit. They are like grass that bends in every wind. They thought they understood humanity. They thought human patience meant human weakness. They were making a terrible mistake. On a green and peaceful farming world called Haven's Rest, a young woman named Lily Grant stood in front of her classroom. She taught history to children between the ages of 10 and 14. Today she was showing them images from old Earth. From the centuries before humans reached the stars, the images were not pleasant. Wars that killed millions. Weapons that could destroy entire cities in a single flash of light. Soldiers fighting in mud and blood across every continent of the human homeworld. "We were not always peaceful," Lily told her students. Her voice was soft but clear. "For most of our history, humans fought each other constantly. We invented terrible weapons. We did terrible things to each other. The 20th and 21st centuries saw wars that killed more humans than all the wars before them combined." The children looked at the images with wide eyes. It was hard for them to imagine. Their lives on Haven's Rest were quiet and safe. They had never seen violence worse than a schoolyard argument. "But we learned," Lily continued. "After centuries of hurting ourselves and each other, we finally learned that violence does not solve problems forever. It only creates new problems. So when we finally built ships that could reach other stars, we made a choice. We chose to be different. We chose peace." A boy in the front row raised his hand. His name was Marcus, and he was always asking difficult questions. "But what if someone keeps hurting us?" he asked. What if we try to talk and they just keep attacking? What do we do then? Lily smiled at him. It was the smile of someone who truly believed in what she was saying. Then we try harder, she said. We look for common ground. We find ways to show them that working together is better than fighting. We prove to them that cooperation helps everyone, even if they kill our people. The question hung in the air. Lily's smile flickered for just a moment, but then it returned. Even then, she said, revenge just continues the cycle of pain. The only way to break that cycle is to refuse to participate in it. That is what makes us human now. That is what makes us better than we used to be. She believed every word. Most humans did. They had built their entire society around these beliefs. Peace was not just a preference. It was an identity. On the Galactic Council station, Ambassador Samuel Webb represented human interests. He was 63 years old, with gray hair and tired eyes. He had spent his entire adult life trying to build bridges between humanity and the other species. Most of the time, he felt like he was building those bridges alone. Today, he sat in a small meeting room across from a Kreth trade minister. The Kreth was named Vorkal, and he was discussing the captured human cargo ship. The ship was in Kreth space, Vorkal said. His voice was like rocks grinding together. Your people should not have been there. The boundary in that region has never been formally established, Samuel replied patiently. That is precisely why we have been requesting negotiations for the past 5 years. Both sides claim that space. We need to find a fair solution. Vorkal showed his teeth. Among Kreth, this was not a smile. It was a threat display. The fair solution is that you stay out of space we want. If you do not, we will continue to take your ships. Perhaps next time we will not bother keeping the crew alive. Samuel kept his face neutral. Inside, something cold and hard was forming in his chest. It was not quite anger. It was something older and deeper, but he pushed it down as he had been trained to do. I will bring your position to my government, he said calmly. I hope we can find a more constructive path forward. Vorkal laughed. It was an ugly sound. You humans talk of paths and construction and cooperation. You talk and talk and talk. In the Kreth Collective, we have a saying. Words are wind. Only actions matter. And your species never acts. You just talk and bend and accept whatever we do to you. He stood up, towering over the human ambassador. You are prey, Vorkal said. You have simply forgotten what it means to be prey. But we remember. And predators do not negotiate with their food. He walked out of the room without another word. Samuel sat alone for a long time after that. He thought about Meridian. He thought about the cargo ships. He thought about 300 years of insults and attacks and condescension, and somewhere deep inside him, in a place he did not like to look at very often, he wondered how much longer humanity could keep choosing peace when the rest of the galaxy kept choosing violence. He did not know that the answer would come very soon. And he did not know that when it came, entire galaxy would tremble. The Kreth Collective had grown very bold in recent years. Their leader, a massive reptilian creature called Sovereign Thaxus, stood before the Galactic Council and spoke with open contempt in his voice. The council chamber was a vast circular room where representatives from dozens of species gathered to discuss matters of galactic importance. Today, they were discussing yet another human complaint. The humans have filed another protest, Thaxus announced to the chamber. His scales were dark green, almost black, and his eyes were the color of dried blood. How tiresome this is becoming. Perhaps if these soft creatures learned to defend their own territory, they would not need to waste this council's valuable time with their endless crying. Laughter filled the chamber. The Velthari delegate made a clicking sound with his mandibles that indicated amusement. The Meloria observers' antennae twitched in what might have been a smile. Even species that usually stayed neutral seemed to find the situation entertaining. Ambassador. Samuel Webb stood at the human delegation's podium. His face showed nothing, but his knuckles were white where he gripped the edge of the podium. We ask only that the council enforce its own laws, he said. His voice was steady and calm. The Kreth Collective has violated 17 different treaties in this decade alone. We have documentation of each violation. We have evidence. We have the testimony of survivors and witnesses. Violations you cannot prove, Thaxus hissed. His tongue, which was forked like a snake's, flickered between his teeth. We have sensor recordings from our ships. We have physical evidence recovered from attack sites. We have fabricated. All of it. Thaxus waved one clawed hand dismissively. Everyone knows that humans are storytellers. You make things up. You exaggerate. You twist the truth to make yourselves look like victims. Samuel took a slow breath. Then we formally request an independent investigation. Let neutral parties examine our evidence and determine the truth. The council deliberated for 6 hours. Representatives argued back and forth. Some species supported the human request. More did not. When the vote finally came, the result was what Samuel had expected but hoped against. Insufficient evidence to proceed. No investigation would be conducted. The matter was closed. The human delegation left the chamber in silence. Samuel did not look back at Thaxus, but he could feel the Kreth leader's satisfied gaze on his back like a cold hand. 3 weeks later, Thackley attacked Haven's Rest. There was no warning. One moment, the people of the colony were going about their normal lives. Farmers were tending their crops. Children were walking to school. Families were eating breakfast together. The next moment, Kreth warships appeared in the sky and began dropping bombs. Lily. Grant was in her classroom when the first explosion shook the building. The windows shattered inward, showering glass across the room. Children screamed. The lights went out. "Everyone get down," Lily shouted. She had never been in danger before. Not real danger, but something ancient woke up inside her. Some instinct that humans had carried since they lived in caves and feared the things that hunted in the dark. "Follow me to the shelter. Stay low and keep moving." She led her students through the hallways. The building was shaking. She could hear more explosions outside, getting closer. Dust fell from the ceiling. Somewhere a child was crying for her mother. The school had an underground shelter. All buildings on human colony worlds had them. It was standard practice, though Lily had always assumed the shelters would never actually be needed. She got most of her students through the heavy door and down the stairs. Then she went back for the ones who had fallen behind. A girl with a twisted ankle. A boy who had frozen in fear and could not move. She carried them, dragged them, pushed them toward safety. The ceiling came down when she was 10 meters from the shelter door, when rescue teams finally reached the school. 2 days later, they found Lily's body in the rubble. She had died shielding a 7-year-old boy named Marcus. The same student who had asked her difficult questions about peace and violence. Marcus had survived. He would carry the memory of his teacher's sacrifice for the rest of his life. The final death count for Haven's Rest reached 58,000 people. Most of them were civilians. Many of them were children. The Kreth had not targeted military installations or government buildings. They had targeted homes and schools and hospitals and parks. When the Galactic Council demanded an explanation, Sovereign Thaxus simply shrugged his massive shoulders. "They were trespassing on space we intend to claim," he said. "We removed the trespassers. This is the natural order of things. The strong take what they want. The weak complain about it. That is how the universe works." The council expressed deep concern. They scheduled an emergency session to discuss the incident. They issued their strongest condemnation yet, using words like deplorable and unacceptable. And then nothing happened. Again on Earth. In a bunker buried deep beneath mountains that had once been called the Rockies. The most powerful people in human civilization gathered around a table. President Maria Santos sat at the head. Around her were admirals and generals, scientists and diplomats, the leaders of every branch of human government. The room was very quiet. On the walls, screens showed images from Haven's Rest, burning buildings, mass graves, a child's stuffed animal lying in a pile of ash. 300 years, Maria said. Her voice was soft, but it carried clearly in the silence. For 300 years, we have bent. We have compromised. We have swallowed our pride. We have buried our anger. We have ignored our grief, all in the name of peace. She stood and walked toward the largest screen, which showed a photograph of a young woman with kind eyes and a gentle smile. Lily Grant's official colony identification photo. She was 27 years old, Maria continued. She became a teacher because she believed that education could change the universe. She died protecting her students because that is what humans do. We protect. We nurture. We build. She turned to face the room. And what has our building earned us? What has our protection achieved? Not respect. Not gratitude. Not security. We have earned contempt. The galaxy sees our restraint as weakness. They see our mercy as cowardice. They see us as prey, Admiral Catherine Cole spoke up. Her voice was rough, as if she had not slept in days. Madam President, what are your orders? Maria Santos was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice had changed. The softness was gone. In its place was something hard and cold and very, very old. 300 years ago, when we first reached the stars, our ancestors made a choice. They chose to hide our true capabilities. They chose to present a peaceful face to the galaxy, while secretly preparing for the day when peace might no longer be possible. They built weapons and hid them. They trained soldiers and kept them ready. They hoped that day would never come. She paused. That day has come. She looked around the table, meeting each pair of eyes in turn. Wake up the Titans. The words seemed to echo in the bunker long after she said them. Everyone in the room understood what they meant. Everyone understood that the galaxy was about to learn a terrible truth about humanity in military bases, hidden throughout human space. Soldiers who had trained their entire lives for a war they hoped would never happen received their orders. In secret shipyards buried inside asteroids, maintenance crews began the process of activating vessels that had sat dormant for generations. In research facilities that did not officially exist, scientists prepared weapons that would give nightmares to anyone who understood what they could do. Humanity had always hoped that this moment would never arrive. They had prayed for it, in their way. They had done everything possible to avoid it. But the moment had arrived nonetheless. And now the galaxy would learn what happened when you pushed the patient giants too far. Now, the galaxy would learn why humanity had always been so determined to choose peace, because they knew, better than anyone, what they were capable of when they chose war. The galaxy had never seen human warships, not the real ones. They had seen human freighters, designed to carry cargo efficiently across long distances. They had seen human exploration vessels built to travel far and discover new worlds. They had seen human diplomatic yachts, comfortable ships meant for ambassadors and negotiators. But the Terran Confederation had never shown its true military, its fleet to anyone outside humanity. Other species had assumed this meant humans had no real military. They thought that a species so focused on peace must have let their weapons rust and their warriors grow soft. They imagined that human defenses consisted of a few patrol boats and perhaps some orbital stations with basic weapons. They were wrong. They were so very wrong. Deep in the asteroid belts of the Sol system, humanity's home star, massive facilities began to wake up. These shipyards had been built in secret over many generations. They had been maintained in silence by crews who understood the importance of their work. They had waited, patient and ready, for the call that everyone hoped would never come. The call had come, the first ship to emerge. From its hidden dock was the dreadnought Unconquered. It was nearly 4 kilometers long, bristling with weapons that the galaxy had never seen. Its hull was armored with materials that human scientists had developed in secret laboratories. Its engines could push it faster than anything the Kreth had ever built. Its weapons systems were nightmares made real. Behind Unconquered came its sister ships, indomitable, resolute, defiant, relentless. One after another they emerged from the asteroids, each one a mountain of metal and fury. And behind them came cruisers and destroyers and carriers. Hundreds of warships that had been waiting in the dark for 300 years. But the ships were only part of what humanity had hidden Dr. Nathan Cross stood in the command center of a research station that had no official name. In classified documents, it was called only Prometheus Base. Nathan was one of perhaps 50 humans alive who knew everything that humanity had developed during its centuries of apparent peace. He watched the screens around him as systems activated one after another. Projects that had been theoretical for generations were now ready for deployment. Weapons that could crack planets open like eggs. Devices that could twist the fabric of space and time itself. Biological agents so precisely designed that they could kill one species while leaving every other species completely unharmed. The Omega protocols are ready. Nathan reported through a secure communication channel. All 17 projects have reached deployment status, said the words calmly, professionally. But his hands were shaking slightly. He had spent his entire career hoping that these weapons would never be needed. He had prayed that they would remain theoretical forever. We never wanted this, he said quietly to himself. We really, really never wanted this. But humans had long memories. They remembered their own history. They remembered what had happened to civilizations that could not defend themselves. They remembered the countless peoples of old Earth who had been conquered and enslaved and destroyed because they were not prepared when enemies came. The Native Americans, the Aboriginal Australians, the countless tribes and nations wiped out by those with better weapons. Humanity had looked at the galaxy and seen the same patterns repeating. Strong species preying on weak ones. Empires rising and falling based on military might. They had known from the very beginning that peace through weakness was no peace at all. So even as they preached cooperation and built trading relationships and signed peace treaties, they had also been building something else. In secret, in silence, in shame almost, because they hated that it was necessary. They had been building the capacity to destroy anyone who threatened their existence across human space. The transformation was happening everywhere at once. The massive cargo stations that handled trade throughout the sector revealed their true nature as military supply depots. The research outposts that had seemed to study boring scientific questions showed themselves to be weapons platforms in disguise. The colony ships that carried settlers to new worlds could be converted into troop transports in a matter of hours. Every human world had underground shelters deep enough to survive orbital bombardment. Every human station had emergency evacuation procedures that had been practiced for generations. The soft species, the ones with no stomach for conflict, had built a civilization designed to absorb a devastating first strike and then deliver an apocalyptic response. The Galactic Council received humanity's declaration of war through a quantum communication burst. The message arrived simultaneously at every capital city on every world in the known galaxy. There was no way to intercept it or block it or pretend it had not been received. Ambassador Webb stood before the council one last time. He did not look tired anymore. He looked like a different person entirely. He read the message aloud in a voice that rang through the great chamber. To all species of the galactic community. For 3 centuries, the Terran Confederation has sought only peace. We have endured insults to our honor. We have accepted theft of our property. We have survived violence against our people. We have negotiated in good faith even when our partners negotiated in bad faith. We have trusted in law and reason even when law and reason failed us. That era has ended. The Kreth Collective has committed genocide against human civilians. The Galactic Council has failed to provide justice. Therefore, humanity will secure justice for itself. This is not a request for negotiation. This is not an opening position for discussion. This is a simple statement of fact. To the Kreth Collective specifically, you have 30 standard days to surrender unconditionally. Release all human prisoners and submit to whatever terms we choose to dictate. To all other species, any interference with our pursuit of justice will be treated as an act of war against humanity. We have no argument with you. Do not give us one. You've spent 300 years believing that we were weak. You were wrong. You will not make that mistake again. When Samuel finished reading, the chamber was silent. No one moved. No one spoke. The Velthari delegates' mandibles hung open in shock. The Mallory observers' antennae were pressed flat against their heads in a posture of extreme fear. Only Sovereign Thaxus seemed amused. He rose from his seat and laughed, a harsh barking sound that echoed through the room. "The humans threaten us," he said. "The grass-eaters threaten the hunters." "With what? Their cargo ships? Their trading vessels? Their soft words? And softer bodies?" He showed his teeth to the room. "The Kreth Collective does not fear empty threats. Let the humans come. We will show them what real warriors look like. We will add their bones to our trophy collections." The laughter of the other Kreth delegates joined his. They genuinely found the situation hilarious. 2 standard days later, the first human fleet arrived in Kreth space. Thaxus was on his flagship when his tactical officer showed him the sensor readings. For a long moment, he simply stared at the display without speaking. "That cannot be correct," he finally said. "Check the sensors again." "I have checked them 3 times, Sovereign. The readings are accurate." The display showed 147 human warships. The smallest of them was larger than the biggest vessel in the Kreth fleet. The largest of them, the dreadnought Unconquered, was so massive that the sensors had initially classified it as a small moon. For the first time in his life, Sovereign Thaxus felt something he had never experienced before. It took him several seconds to recognize the emotion because it was so unfamiliar. It was fear. On the bridge of Unconquered, Admiral Catherine Cole watched the Kreth fleet scrambling to form defensive positions. She thought about her brother, dead on Meridian. She thought about Lily Grant, dead protecting her students. She thought about 58,000 people who would never laugh or cry or dream again, because the Kreth had decided they were prey. "Admiral," her tactical officer reported, "the enemy fleet is moving to intercept. They are broadcasting demands for our surrender." Catherine almost smiled. "Almost. Open a channel to the Kreth flagship," she said. "I want to speak to Sovereign Thaxus directly." A moment later, the reptilian leader's face appeared on her screen. He was trying to look confident, but Catherine had spent her life reading people. She could see the fear behind his eyes. "You dare to enter Kreth space?" Thaxus demanded. "You dare to threaten us with your toys?" "Sovereign Thaxus," Catherine replied, her voice perfectly calm. "You have killed 58,000 of my people. I am going to give you one chance to surrender now. Take it. Surrender. To prey. We are the Kreth Collective. We have crushed a dozen species. You have 5 seconds to accept my offer. We will never. Time is up." Catherine cut the channel. She looked at her tactical officer. "All ships. Weapons free." What happened next would be remembered for 1,000 years. The Battle of Kreth. Prime lasted 11 hours. Military historians would later call it the most one-sided engagement in the entire recorded history of the galaxy. No battle before or since would match its combination of overwhelming force and terrifying efficiency. It would be studied in war academies across 1,000 worlds for centuries to come. The Kreth had assembled 300 warships to defend their homeworld. These were not small vessels. The Kreth fleet included battlecruisers and heavy destroyers, ships that had crushed a dozen other species over thousands of years of conquest. The Kreth commanders were experienced warriors who had never known defeat. They were confident. They outnumbered the incoming human fleet by almost 2 to 1. They believed numbers would be enough. Admiral Catherine Cole stood on the bridge of Unconquered, watching the tactical display as the Kreth fleet moved into attack formation. Around her, her crew worked with quiet efficiency. There was no fear in their movements. There was no uncertainty. They had trained for this moment their entire lives. "Enemy fleet is in range," her tactical officer announced. "They are charging weapons." "Status of our fleet?" "All ships report ready." "Weapons systems armed?" "Shields at maximum." Catherine nodded slowly. She thought about all the years of preparation, all the secret shipyards, all the hidden weapons programs, all the generations of soldiers who had trained and waited and hoped they would never be needed. The waiting was over. "All ships," she said, her voice carrying across the fleet through quantum communication. Engage. The Kreth fired first. Particle beams lanced across the darkness between the fleets. Kinetic missiles erupted from launch tubes by the hundreds. The Kreth were not holding back. They threw everything they had at the human ships in a single massive attack. The human ships did not even bother to dodge. Their shields absorbed the assault like a lake absorbing raindrops. The tactical officer reported minor fluctuations in shield strength on 2 vessels. Nothing significant. Then the humans fired back. The lead Kreth battlecruiser was called Dominance. It was the flagship of the Kreth Third Fleet, a vessel that had destroyed over 40 enemy ships in its career. One moment it was there, a mountain of metal and weapons pointed at the human formation. The next moment, it was simply gone, not destroyed, not exploded. Gone. A human weapon had created a localized gravitational anomaly, a tiny artificial black hole that existed for less than a second. In that fraction of time, it pulled the entire battlecruiser into a space smaller than an atom, crushing it out of existence. Across the battlefield, similar scenes were playing out everywhere. Human ships fired weapons that seemed to ignore the laws of physics that other species understood. Quantum disruption fields caused Kreth targeting computers to go insane, making ships fire on their own allies. Temporal distortion pulses aged metal to dust in seconds, causing entire vessels to crumble like ancient ruins. Neural cascade projectors killed every living being on a ship, while leaving the hull completely intact. The Kreth had never seen anything like this. No one had ever seen anything like this. These were not just better versions of weapons that already existed. These were entirely new categories of destruction that other species had not even imagined. Commander Daniel Pierce stood beside Admiral Cole, watching the tactical display update in real time. Red dots representing Kreth ships were winking out one after another. "They are breaking formation," he reported. "Some ships are trying to retreat." "Let none escape," Catherine ordered. "I want this to be complete. I want every species in the galaxy to see exactly what happened here." The battle continued, though calling it a battle seemed almost wrong. A battle implied that both sides had a chance of winning. This was something else entirely. This was a lesson being taught with fire and death. After 3 hours, the Kreth had lost half their fleet. After 6 hours, they had lost 3/4. The remaining ships were scattering in all directions, abandoning any pretense of organized resistance. Sovereign Thaxus was still alive on his command ship, though most of his fleet was now debris. He watched the impossible destruction on his tactical display and felt something break inside him. Every belief he had ever held about the universe, about strength, about the natural order of predator and prey, was crumbling like ash. "Possible," he whispered. "This is impossible." They were weak. They were prey. How can prey do this? His communication officer turned to him with terror in her eyes. "Sovereign, the humans are hailing us. They want to speak with you." Thaxus straightened his spine. He would not show fear, even now. "Put them on screen." Admiral Cole's face appeared. She looked exactly as calm as she had at the beginning of the battle. There was no triumph in her expression, no gloating. Just a cold, patient resolve that was somehow more terrifying than anger would have been. "Sovereign Thaxus," she said, "you have 1 hour to power down all weapons and prepare your remaining ships for boarding. Any resistance will result in the immediate destruction of all Kreth vessels. Your homeworld will be occupied. Your military will be completely dismantled. Your leaders will stand trial for their crimes against humanity." Thaxus found his voice. "And if we refuse, will you destroy our entire species?" Catherine was quiet for a moment. When she spoke again, her voice was softer, but no less firm. "We are not like you, Sovereign. We do not commit genocide. We do not murder civilians. We do not kill for pleasure or conquest. We kill only when we must, and only those who have earned it through their own actions." She leaned forward slightly. "Make no mistake. If you force us to continue this battle, we will destroy every warship you have. We will occupy your world and dismantle your military capabilities so thoroughly that your grandchildren will not remember what a weapon looks like. We will take everything that makes you a threat, and we will break it. Her eyes seemed to burn through the screen. The galaxy has just learned what happens when humanity's patience breaks. Pray you never make us demonstrate it again. You have 1 hour. The screen went dark. Sovereign Thaxus sat in silence for a long moment. Around him, his officers waited for orders. Some of them still wanted to fight. He could see it in their eyes. Die with honor rather than surrender to prey. But Thaxus had seen the tactical display. He had watched 200 of his ships die in less than 6 hours, while the humans had not lost a single vessel. This was not a fight that could be won through bravery or determination. This was not a fight that could be won at all. All ships, he said, and his voice sounded hollow and broken, powered down weapons. Prepare for boarding. When news of the battle spread across the galaxy, the reaction was universal shock. Species that had mocked humans for 3 centuries fell silent. The Velthari Dominion, which had demanded human territory dozens of times, immediately sent messages apologizing for every insult they had ever made. The Malori, who had banned human religious practices as offensive, sent elaborate gifts and begged for forgiveness. The Galactic Council called an emergency session to discuss what they had witnessed. But the discussion kept circling back to the same question, asked in 100 different ways. How had they missed this? How had they looked at humanity for 3 centuries and seen only weakness? How had they failed to notice the steel beneath the gentle surface? On the bridge of Unconquered, Admiral Cole allowed herself a single moment of emotion. She thought of her brother. She thought of Lily Grant. She thought of all the humans who had died while humanity tried so hard to be peaceful. It was worth it, she said quietly. All the years of patience, all the insults we swallowed, all the attacks we did not answer. It was worth it because it gave us time. Time to build. Time to prepare. Time to become strong enough that when we finally had to fight, we could end it quickly and completely. Commander Pierce looked at her. Do you think they understand now? The other species? Catherine watched the Kreth ships powering down their weapons, preparing to accept the consequences of their actions. They are beginning to understand, she said. But the lesson is not over yet. They need to see what happens next. They need to see that we can be just as merciful in victory as we were patient in peace. That is how we will truly change things. The occupation of Kreth Prime was about to begin, and the galaxy was about to learn another lesson about humanity. A lesson about justice. About restraint. About being strong enough to win and wise enough to know when to stop. A lesson that would reshape galactic civilization. Forever, the occupation of Kreth Prime was careful and complete. Human troops landed on the homeworld in waves, securing government buildings and military bases and communication centers. They moved with discipline and precision, following plans that had been developed over decades. Every soldier knew exactly what to do and where to go. But the real surprise was not how efficiently the humans fought. It was how they behaved after the fighting stopped. General Anthony Reeves commanded the ground forces. He was a tall man with gray eyes and a face that seemed carved from stone. He had spent his entire career preparing for a war he hoped would never happen. Now that it had happened, he was determined to end it correctly. He walked through the capital city of Kreth Prime, flanked by human soldiers in full combat armor. All around them, Kreth civilians watched from windows and doorways. Their reptilian faces showed emotions that humans had rarely seen from this species before: fear, confusion, disbelief. They had been taught since birth that the strong ruled and the weak served. They had been told that humans were prey, soft and cowardly, and fit only for conquest. Now human soldiers walked through their streets, and everything they believed was being proven wrong. General, one of his officers said, the population centers are secured. We have control of all essential infrastructure. What are your orders regarding civilian areas? Anthony looked at the aliens surrounding him. He saw children clinging to their parents. He saw elderly Kreth watching from balconies with ancient eyes. He saw fear that he recognized because humans had felt it too, many times throughout their history. Restore essential services, he said. Medical care, food distribution, clean water. Make sure the civilians have what they need to survive. His officer hesitated. Sir, after what they did to Haven's Rest, ... I know what they did. Anthony's voice was hard, but not angry. I lost friends at Haven's Rest. I have every reason to want revenge. But we are not here for revenge. We are here for justice. Sir. Is a difference. Yes, sir. But the soldiers are asking. Some of them lost family in the attack. They want to know why we are helping the same species that murdered our children. Anthony stopped walking. He turned to face his officer directly. Because that is what separates us from them, he said. The Kreth attacked civilians because they saw us as prey. They killed children because they thought they could. We will not do the same. We are better than that. That is the whole point of this war. We fight to stop monsters, not to become them. He started walking again. Any soldier who cannot follow that order will be sent home immediately. We did not spend 300 years building a civilization based on principle just to abandon those principles the moment we have power. Is that understood? Yes, sir. The war crimes trials began 3 months after the occupation started. They were held in a special court built on Kreth Prime itself, so that the Kreth people could see justice being done. Sovereign Thaxus and 47 other Kreth leaders were charged with genocide, crimes against sentient beings, and violations of interstellar law. Human judges presided over the trials. But representatives from every major species in the galaxy were invited to observe. Most of them accepted. They wanted to see how humanity handled victory. The evidence against the defendants was overwhelming. Sensor recordings showed the attack on Haven's Rest in terrible detail. Survivor testimony described the horror of the bombardment. Military communications proved that the attack had been ordered from the highest levels of Kreth leadership, that it had been planned as an act of terror designed to frighten humans into submission. The trials lasted 6 months. Every defendant received a fair hearing. Every piece of evidence was examined carefully. The process was slow and methodical and completely transparent. In the end, all 48 defendants were found guilty. Most of them received life sentences in a human prison facility, where they would live out their days in comfortable but permanent captivity. Sovereign Thaxus received a different sentence. For his role in ordering the genocide at Haven's Rest, he was condemned to death. It was the first death sentence that humanity had carried out in over a century. The decision was not made lightly. Before his execution, Thaxus was allowed to make a final statement. He chose to speak not to the court, but to the human guards who would carry out the sentence. One of them was a young soldier named Peter Kim, who had lost his grandmother on Haven's Rest. "I do not understand you," Thaxus said. His voice was quieter than it had been in the days of his power. Months in captivity had changed him. You had the power to destroy us completely. You could have killed every Kreth alive. You could have taken our worlds, enslaved our people, done to us everything we would have done to you. Why did you not? Peter thought about the question for a long moment before answering. Because power is not the point, he said finally. Justice is the point. You hurt us, so we stopped you from hurting us again. But we do not want to rule you. We do not want to destroy you. We just want to live in peace the way we always wanted. And why build such terrible weapons if not to conquer? Why become so strong if you never intended to use that strength? Peter shrugged. We hoped we would never have to use them. We really did. We spent 300 years hoping that the galaxy would let us be peaceful. You just proved that hope was not enough. Thaxus was silent for a moment. When he spoke again, his voice was very soft. We made a mistake, he said. We saw your gentleness and thought it was weakness. We saw your patience and thought it was cowardice. We were fools. Yes, Peter agreed. You were the execution was carried out the following morning. It was quick and painless, more merciful than anything the Kreth had ever offered their victims. Thaxus died looking at the sky of his homeworld, the last thing he would ever see. In the years that followed, the galaxy transformed. The Galactic Council reformed its entire structure. Humanity was given a permanent seat with significant power over military decisions. Trade agreements were renegotiated to be fairer. Species that had spent centuries bullying and exploiting each other found themselves forced to cooperate under the watchful eyes of human diplomats backed by human warships. But the biggest change was in how other species viewed humanity. For 300 years, aliens had looked at humans and seen a puzzle. A species that seemed advanced but acted weak. A civilization that built wonders but refused to fight. They had explained this contradiction by assuming that humans were simply incapable of violence, that they lacked the warrior instinct that other species possessed. Now, they understood the truth. Humanity was not incapable of violence. Humans were very, very capable of violence. They had simply chosen not to use that capability unless absolutely necessary. That was far more frightening than any other explanation would have been. On Earth, President Maria Santos addressed the entire human population in a broadcast that was also transmitted across the galaxy. "Today marks a new chapter in our history," she said. "For 300 years we proved that we could be peaceful. Now we have proved that we are also strong. The galaxy knows both of these truths about us now." She paused, letting her words settle. "I want to be clear about what we want going forward. We want trade. We want cooperation. We want to explore the universe and make discoveries and build things that will last. We want to live alongside our galactic neighbors in mutual respect and friendship. That has always been our goal, and it remains our goal today." Her expression hardened slightly. "But we will never again accept being treated as prey. We will never again allow our patience to be mistaken for weakness. We will never again tolerate attacks on our civilians, especially our children. Any species that targets innocent humans will face the full consequences of their actions. There will be no warnings. There will be no lengthy negotiations. There will only be justice, delivered swiftly and completely." Centuries later, this speech was still taught in schools across the galaxy. Young beings of every species learned about the Kreth reckoning. They learned about humanity's long patience and humanity's terrible response when that patience ended. And in every classroom, on every world, teachers shared the same warning. The humans are not weak. They are not passive. They are simply kind, and they prefer to solve problems without violence. Do not mistake that kindness for inability. Do not force them to show you what they are truly capable of, because they will show you, and you will not survive the lesson. On Haven's Rest, which had been rebuilt in the decades after the attack, a memorial stood in the center of the largest city. It contained the names of all 58,000 people who had died. At the very top of the list was Lily Grant, the teacher who had died protecting her students. A statue of her stood before the memorial. She was shown reaching out her hand, as if offering help to someone who needed it. On the base of the statue were carved 2 sentences. She believed in peace. She died teaching others to believe in it too. Every year on the anniversary of the attack, humans gathered at memorials like this one across their civilization. They remembered the dead. They renewed their commitment to peace. And they reminded themselves why they had built the weapons they hoped they would never use BECs, because no species would ever forget the moment humanity's tolerance finally broke, and none of them wanted to see it happen again.